The scream that tore through the Gulfstream G650's cabin at 41,000 feet wasn't the kind you heard in movies. It was raw, primal, the sound of pure terror when reality becomes nightmare. The cockpit door exploded inward with a metallic shriek that made every passenger's blood freeze. "Get down! Everyone on the floor now!" Mason Volkov's voice boomed through the cabin, his AK-47 sweeping across the terrified faces of the passengers. The barrel gleamed under the soft LED cabin lights, a promise of violence that needed no translation. Hazel Brooks stood frozen near the galley, her slender fingers wrapped around a silver tea tray that trembled like autumn leaves. 27 years old, dressed in the crisp black uniform of private aviation service staff, she looked exactly like what she appeared to be, a butler caught in the worst possible moment. The fine china cups rattled against each other, creating a delicate symphony of fear. Mason's eyes locked onto her immediately. 6'3", 240 pounds of Eastern European muscle wrapped in tactical gear. He moved with the confidence of a man who had done this before. His boots thundered across the carpet as he closed the distance. "You first, little doll!" His massive hand tangled in Hazel's honey blonde hair, yanking hard enough to bring tears to her eyes. The tea service crashed to the floor, Earl Grey spreading across the cream-colored carpet like a dark prophecy. He shoved her down hard, her knees hitting the floor with a crack that made several passengers wince. "Pathetic servant girl," Mason growled, planting his combat boot between her shoulder blades, pressing her flat against the cold floor. "Stay down where you belong." Carter Sterling, the 60-year-old CEO whose chartered flight this was, tried to rise from his leather seat. "Don't touch her. She's just—" Connor's rifle butt connected with Carter's temple before he could finish. Blood splattered across the window, painting the clouds below crimson. The businessman crumpled back into his seat, consciousness flickering like a failing light bulb. 6 terrorists, 5 hostages. No escape, Blake announced in heavily accented English, checking his military-grade watch. His fingers danced across a tablet, probably accessing the plane's systems. In 2 hours, this aircraft becomes an airborne bomb. The American military will have quite the surprise. Hazel remained prone, her cheek pressed against the floor's subtle vibration. Through her peripheral vision, she cataloged everything. Lily Chen, the 23-year-old flight attendant, sobbed quietly in the corner, mascara running in dark rivers down her porcelain cheeks. Captain Oliver Mitchell sat bound to his pilot seat with zip ties, silver duct tape across his mouth, his eyes burning with the fury of a military veteran forced into helplessness. Aiden, Carter's personal security detail, lay unconscious near the cockpit door, a spreading red stain on his white shirt where a bullet had found his shoulder. The other passengers, Sarah, a venture capitalist returning from a London conference, Daniel, a corporate lawyer, Grace, an emergency room doctor, and Joshua, a tech millionaire barely out of college, huddled together like sheep sensing wolves. Ryan, the youngest of the terrorist crew at maybe 25, laughed as he rifled through a passenger's Louis Vuitton bag. "Look at all these rich people toys," he said, holding up a Rolex, "worth more than most people make in 5 years. Ethan, stockier and covered in prison tattoos that peeked from his collar, kicked the bag aside. "We're not here for jewelry, idiot. We're here for what's in Sterling's head." Logan, silent until now, moved through the cabin methodically, collecting phones and tablets, crushing them under his heel one by one. The sound of breaking glass and twisted metal created a rhythm of destruction. Mason stepped over Hazel's prone form, deliberately dragging his boot across her back. "When we need entertainment, this little maid will provide it nicely." He made a gesture that needed no translation, and his crew chuckled darkly. Hazel's fingers found the floor in a specific pattern. 3 short taps, 3 long, 3 short. Morse code that would mean nothing to these men, but everything to the right observer. SOS. But there was something else in the rhythm. A secondary pattern hidden within the distress signal that only someone with very specific training would recognize. The cabin's atmosphere had shifted from the comfortable privilege of private aviation to a suffocating box of fear. The recycled air tasted metallic, like blood and adrenaline. Outside, the vast Atlantic stretched endlessly below, offering no salvation at 41,000 feet. "Please," Lily whispered through her tears, "we haven't done anything to you." Connor backhanded her casually, splitting her lip. "You exist. That's enough." But while everyone focused on the crying flight attendant, on the unconscious CEO, on the bound pilot, no one noticed how Hazel's breathing had changed. Gone was the hyperventilation of panic. In its place was something else entirely, the controlled, measured breathing of someone conserving oxygen, preparing their body for what would come next. They had no idea that in 20 minutes, this cabin would transform into something else entirely. They couldn't know that the woman they'd dismissed as furniture was counting their steps, memorizing their patterns, cataloging their weapons. They certainly couldn't fathom that the trembling servant girl pressed against the floor had once earned a nickname in the killing fields of Syria that made hardened soldiers whisper in awe and terror. Phantom, the name that would soon turn their confident smiles into masks of horror. But not yet. For now, Hazel Brooks remained exactly what they expected, helpless, worthless, and broken. The greatest warriors, after all, understood that invisibility was the deadliest weapon of all. Mason checked his watch again. "Blake, status on the escort? No military aircraft within 500 miles, Blake replied, his fingers never stopping their dance across the tablet. "We're ghosts up here." "Perfect." Mason pulled out a satellite phone. "Time to make our demands known." As he dialed, Hazel's eyes tracked to a specific spot on the cabin ceiling. A tiny imperfection in the paneling that wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. But she knew what lay behind it, what had been placed there 8 months ago when she'd first taken this position. When MI6 had intercepted communications about a planned hijacking and decided to place an asset in deep cover, they thought she was just the help, the girl who served their drinks and cleaned their messes. They had no idea they were about to learn why the British SAS had precisely one female operator in their entire history who'd earned the right to wear the winged dagger, and why that operator had supposedly died in Syria 2 years ago. Before we dive deeper into this intense story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our military thriller content. We upload new stories every week featuring elite operators, special forces legends, and classified missions. Also drop a comment below. What would you do if terrorists hijacked your plane? Your support keeps these stories coming. Now, let's return to Hazel's deadly game at 41,000 feet. The satellite phone connected with a series of clicks and static. Mason spoke in rapid Russian, his words sharp and efficient. Hazel understood every word, a skill these men would never suspect from a British butler. He was confirming the operation was proceeding, that they had Sterling, and that in exactly 120 minutes, they would either have the defense codes or the plane would nosedive into the Atlantic. "Bring the CEO," Mason ordered. Connor and Ryan hauled Carter's semi-conscious form toward the center of the cabin, dropping him roughly onto the floor. Blood from his head wound had started to congeal, matting his gray hair into dark clumps. "Wake him up," Mason commanded. Blake produced a small vial of smelling salts, waving it under Carter's nose. The older man jerked back to consciousness, eyes wild with confusion before reality crashed back. His gaze found Hazel on the floor, and something flickered across his face. Not fear, but recognition of a different sort. "Mr. Sterling," Mason said pleasantly, squatting down to eye level, "you have something I need, the access codes to Project Harbinger." Carter's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mason smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "The defense satellite network your company has been developing for the Pentagon, the one that can target any location on Earth within 30 seconds. Don't play stupid, it doesn't suit a man of your intelligence." "Even if I knew anything about that," Carter said carefully, "those codes change every 6 hours. Whatever information you think I have is useless." "Not the master override codes," Blake interjected, looking up from his tablet. "Those are biometrically locked to 5 individuals. You're one of them." Logan pulled out a specialized scanner, its surface gleaming with advanced biometric sensors. "We just need your retinal scan, fingerprints, and voice pattern. You can provide them willingly, or we can extract them from your corpse. The equipment doesn't care either way." From her position on the floor, Hazel watched Carter's face pale. Project Harbinger was beyond classified. The fact that these men even knew its name meant they had inside information. Her mission briefing had mentioned protecting Sterling, but nothing about defense satellites. This had just become infinitely more complicated. "Boss," Ethan called from near the cockpit, "the pilot's trying something." Indeed, Oliver had managed to work one hand partially free from the zip ties, his fingers stretching toward what looked like an emergency beacon switch. Connor crossed the cabin in 3 strides and slammed Oliver's head against the instrument panel. The The pilot groaned through the duct tape, fresh blood trickling from his nose. "Try that again and I'll throw you out at altitude," Connor warned. "See how well you fly without a plane." Hazel shifted slightly, just enough to ease the pressure on her ribs. The movement drew Ryan's attention. The youngest terrorist sauntered over, his boots stopping inches from her face. "You know what I love about these private flights?" he mused, reaching down to stroke Hazel's hair with mock gentleness. "The staff are always so accommodating. Aren't you, sweetheart?" She flinched at his touch, a perfectly calibrated response of fear and revulsion. Inside, she was mapping the cabin. 6 hostiles, primary weapons, 3 AK-47s, 2 Glock 19s visible, likely more concealed. Connor favored his right side, probably hiding an injury. Blake kept touching his lower back, either a nervous habit or checking a concealed weapon. Logan moved with his weight slightly forward, classic knife fighter stance. Ethan had a tremor in his left hand, barely noticeable, old nerve damage or withdrawal from something. Ryan was all swagger, no substance, the weakest link. And Mason was dangerous, not just because he was the leader, but because of how he moved. Former military, definitely. Spetsnaz, if she had to guess. The way he controlled space, always keeping optimal firing angles, never presenting his back to more than one person at a time. He'd done this before, probably many times. "Leave her alone," Lily said suddenly, finding courage through her tears. "She's done nothing to you." Ryan whirled on the flight attendant. "Oh, the pretty one wants to play hero?" He grabbed Lily's chin roughly. "Maybe we should have some fun with both of them. What do you think, Mason? 20 minutes until the next check-in?" Mason considered this with the casual air of a man deciding on lunch options. 10 minutes. We stay on schedule." 10 minutes is plenty," Ryan leered, starting to unbuckle his belt. That's when Hazel made her first real move. Not the dramatic reveal everyone might expect, but something far subtler. As she shifted again, appearing to cower away from Ryan, her hand brushed against a piece of the broken tea service. A shard of porcelain, sharp as a razor, disappeared into her sleeve with a motion so smooth it looked like nothing more than a terrorized woman trying to make herself smaller. "Actually," Ethan interrupted, "I want to see something first." He looked at Hazel with calculating eyes. "You, servant girl, stand up." Hazel pushed herself up slowly, keeping her movements deliberately clumsy, like someone whose legs had gone numb from fear. She stood with her shoulders hunched, making herself appear smaller, non-threatening. The uniform helped, the conservative black dress and low heels of private aviation service staff, designed to blend into the background. "You've been on this plane before," Ethan said. It wasn't a question. "How many times?" Every flight for the past 8 months, sir," Hazel stammered, adding just the right amount of tremor to her voice. "And you know this plane well?" Yes, sir," Ethan smiled coldly. "Good. Because you are going to help us. There's a sealed compartment in the lower cargo hold. Executive safe, combination locked. You're going to tell us the combination." Hazel's eyes widened. I'm not authorized." Logan backhanded her, snapping her head to the side. The blow was hard enough to draw blood from her lip, but not hard enough to do real damage. She'd taken far worse in training. Still, she let herself stumble, catching herself against the galley counter. "Wrong answer," Logan said quietly. "Try again." "The combination changes," Hazel said, letting tears well in her eyes. "Mr. Sterling changes it every flight." "But you clean everything," Blake observed, looking up from his tablet with interest. "You dust, you vacuum, you polish, you see things." This was the test. They were probing, seeing if she was more than she appeared. Hazel let her gaze flicker to Carter, then back to the floor. Sometimes Mr. Sterling writes things down, in his notebook, when he thinks no one is looking. Carter's sharp intake of breath was genuine. There was indeed a notebook, and he did indeed write sensitive information in it. What he didn't know was that Hazel had been photographing those pages for MI6 for months. "Where's the notebook?" Mason demanded. "His briefcase, in the forward storage compartment." Connor retrieved the briefcase, a leather Hermes that probably cost more than most people's cars. He dumped its contents unceremoniously onto a seat. Papers, pens, a tablet, and yes, a moleskin notebook. Blake flipped through it rapidly, his eyes scanning pages of handwritten notes. "It's encoded," he announced. "Some kind of cipher." "Can you break it?" Mason asked. "Given time, but there might be a faster way." Blake looked at Hazel again. You've seen him right in this. You must have noticed patterns. Hazel bit her lip, playing the reluctant informant perfectly. He sometimes spoke the numbers out loud when he wrote them, like he was memorizing them. So, you heard them? Some of them. Maybe. Mason moved closer, his presence filling her vision. I'm going to make this very simple, little maid. You're going to tell us every single thing you remember, or I'm going to let Ryan have his 10 minutes with you, and then Connor, and then the rest. And when they're done, whatever's left of you goes out the emergency exit. Understood? Hazel nodded frantically, letting her whole body shake. 4-7-1, no, 4-7-3. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. As she pretended to struggle with the numbers, her trained eye caught something else. Aiden, the wounded security guard, wasn't as unconscious as he appeared. His breathing pattern was controlled, and his fingers had found the same rhythm she'd tapped earlier. He was former military. She'd suspected it from his bearing, but now she was certain. He'd recognized her SOS and its hidden secondary pattern. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. She gave the tiniest shake of her head. Not yet. 4-7-3-9, she continued, making her voice smaller. Then something with 2 6s. I think. Blake was typing into his tablet, running decryption algorithms. Keep going. The next 10 minutes became a masterclass in manipulation. Hazel fed them just enough real information to keep them interested, mixed with enough mistakes to maintain her cover as a frightened servant with a decent memory, but no real understanding of what she'd overheard. She watched them relax incrementally, dismissing her as a useful but ultimately harmless tool. Ryan grew impatient. This is taking too long. Mason, you promised. Shut up, Mason cut him off. Blake, how much longer? I'm close. The cipher is a rotating substitution with a mathematical sequence. If she's remembering the numbers correctly, I should have it in. His tablet beeped. Got it. The notebook's contents decoded into a series of technical specifications and, yes, buried on page 7, a 20-digit alphanumeric sequence labeled only with the Greek letter omega. Is that it? Logan asked. Has to be, Blake confirmed. This matches the format for Harbinger's master override. Mason smiled, genuine pleasure crossing his features for the first time. Excellent. Now we just need the biometrics. He turned to Carter. Your cooperation, Mr. Sterling. Go to hell, Carter spat. Eventually, but you first. Mason nodded to Connor, who produced a wickedly curved knife. We'll start with fingers. You only need 1 for the scanner, so you can afford to lose 9. Wait, Grace the doctor tried to stand. You can't just... Ethan shoved her back down. Watch us. Connor grabbed Carter's left hand, spreading the fingers against the floor. The knife rose, its edge catching the cabin lights. Hazel watched the trajectory, calculating. In about 3 seconds, Carter would lose his pinky finger, and this would escalate beyond any chance of nonviolent resolution. The mission parameters had just shifted from observation to intervention. But not obviously, not yet. As Connor's knife descended, Hazel suddenly convulsed, her body spasming in what looked like a panic attack. She crashed into the galley counter, sending a drawer sliding open. Medical supplies scattered across the floor, bandages, antiseptic, and a small case of emergency medications, including epinephrine auto-injectors. Control your servant, Connor snarled, his concentration broken. I'm sorry, Hazel gasped, dropping to her knees among the scattered supplies. In the chaos of gathering them up, 2 auto-injectors disappeared into her uniform pockets. I can't watch. Mason kicked her aside. Pathetic. Connor, continue. But the moment was broken. Carter had used the distraction to pull his hand back, and now Connor had to reposition. As he did, Lily suddenly vomited, the stress finally overwhelming her system. The sour smell filled the cabin, making everyone step back in disgust. For crying out loud, Ryan complained. Boss, can we just shoot someone and be done with it? No, Blake said sharply. We need Sterling alive for the biometrics. Dead tissue won't work with the scanners for at least 6 hours. This was news to them, apparently. Mason's jaw tightened with annoyance. You didn't mention that before. You didn't ask. Tension rippled between the terrorists. Hazel filed this away. They weren't as unified as they appeared. Blake was the technical expert, but he didn't fully trust Mason. Connor and Ryan were muscle, but Ryan was getting antsy, probably high on something. Ethan was the steadiest besides Mason, but that tremor in his hand was getting worse. Logan was the wild card, silent and watchful. "Clean this up," Mason ordered, gesturing at Lily's mess. "You, servant, do your job." Hazel grabbed cleaning supplies from the galley, moving past each terrorist in turn. As she knelt to clean, she mapped their exact positions, noted which ones kept their fingers on triggers and which had relaxed, cataloged every weapon visible, and theorized about what wasn't. Connor had a Sig Sauer Pietstiministan ankle holster. She could see the slight bulge when he shifted. Blake's lower back definitely concealed a weapon, probably a compact pistol. Logan had at least 3 knives on him, based on the way his clothing hung. Ethan kept touching his left pocket, either cigarettes or something pharmaceutical. 22 minutes had passed since the initial takeover. Her internal clock, honed by years of operations where timing meant survival, kept perfect track. In 98 minutes, they expected to either have what they wanted or crash this plane into the ocean. She wouldn't let either happen. As she cleaned, she caught Oliver watching her from the cockpit. The old pilot's eyes tracked her movements with unusual attention. When she passed close enough, he blinked 3 times rapidly, military code for message received. Another asset? No. Just a veteran who recognized something in her movements, the way she held herself despite the act. "Boss," Blake announced, "we have a problem." Everyone tensed. Mason crossed to look at the tablet screen. "What kind of problem?" "Air traffic control in Gander is asking about our deviation from flight path. We're supposed to be 16 degrees further north. So, tell them we hit turbulence." "I did. They're not buying it. They want to speak to the pilot." Mason considered this, then ripped the duct tape from Oliver's mouth. The pilot gasped, working his jaw. "You're going to tell them everything is fine," Mason instructed. "Any code words, any deviation from normal protocol, and the flight attendant gets a bullet in the head. Understood?" Oliver nodded. Blake handed him the radio headset, keeping his Glock pressed against Lily's temple for emphasis. "Gander Center, this is November 773 Whiskey Bravo," Oliver said, his voice professionally calm. "Sorry about the deviation. We hit some unexpected clear air turbulence and had to adjust heading for passenger comfort. There was static then. November 773 Whiskey Bravo, Gander Center. Understood." "Are you declaring any emergency?" "Negative, Gander. All systems normal, just giving the passengers a smoother ride." "Roger that. November 773. Whiskey Bravo. Maintain current heading and altitude. Report any further deviations." "Will do, Gander Center. November 7 Season. 7-3 Whiskey Bravo, out." Blake lowered the gun, and Mason replaced the duct tape over Oliver's mouth. "Good boy. See how easy cooperation can be?" The tablet in Blake's hands beeped again. He frowned at the screen. "That's odd." "What?" "There's an encrypted data burst coming from this plane, but I've disabled all communication systems except the one we're controlling." Mason's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Find it." Blake's fingers flew across the screen. I can't locate the source. The signal is bouncing through the plane's internal systems somehow." For the first time, real concern crossed Mason's features. He looked at each hostage in turn, his gaze lingering on Hazel. She kept her expression perfectly vacant, focusing on folding the dirty cleaning cloths with obsessive precision. "Could be an automatic distress beacon," Logan suggested, speaking for only the 2nd time since the takeover began. "No," Blake said. "This is deliberate. Someone is transmitting." The atmosphere in the cabin shifted, paranoia creeping in like fog. Mason pulled his AK-47 to ready position. "Everyone against the walls, now!" The hostages scrambled to comply. Connor and Ryan began searching them more thoroughly, checking for hidden devices. When Connor reached Hazel, his hands lingered longer than necessary, groping under the guise of searching. She endured it with closed eyes, keeping her breathing panicked rather than the controlled fury building inside her. He found nothing, of course. The transmitter wasn't on her. It was built into the plane itself, activated by the specific sequence she'd tapped on the floor earlier. By now, MI6 knew the plane had been compromised. Response protocols would be activating, but at 41,000 feet over the Atlantic, help was still far away. "Nothing," Connor reported after they had searched everyone. Blake was still working his tablet. The signal stopped, but it definitely transmitted for 43 seconds. "Enough to send a message," Mason muttered. He grabbed Carter by the throat. "Did you activate something?" "I've been unconscious half the time and tied up the rest," Carter gasped. "How could I activate anything?" Logic, but Mason was beyond that now. The plan was unraveling at the edges. Hazel could see it in his posture, the way his finger moved from trigger guard to trigger. When operations went sideways, unstable teams fractured, and fractures could be exploited. We need to accelerate the timeline, Mason decided. Blake, can you access the safe with what we have? The notebook has most of what we need, but without the biometrics, then we get them now. Mason turned to Connor. Bring the scanner. Connor produced a briefcase-sized device, military-grade biometric scanner capable of storing and transmitting biological signatures. They just needed Carter to cooperate for 30 seconds. Hold him, Mason ordered. Ryan and Ethan grabbed Carter's arms, forcing him to his knees. Connor powered up the scanner, its screen glowing pale blue. Retinal scan first, Blake instructed. Connor grabbed Carter's head, forcing his right eye open. The scanner beeped, a red line sweeping across Carter's dilated pupil. Got it. Now, fingerprints. They forced Carter's hand onto the scanner pad. 10 quick beeps as it captured each fingerprint in high resolution. Voice pattern. We need him to speak his authorization phrase. I won't, Carter started. Mason shot Daniel in the shoulder. The lawyer's scream filled the cabin as he crumpled to the floor. Grace immediately moved to help him, pressing her hands against the wound. Blood seeped between her fingers. That was your warning shot, Mason said calmly. The next one goes in the flight attendant's head. Your authorization phrase, Mr. Sterling. Carter's face had gone gray. He looked at Lily, trembling, and covered in her own vomit, then at Daniel bleeding on the floor. Project Harbinger authorization, Carter said in a defeated tone. Sterling, Carter, 97 Alpha Tango 77. The scanner beeped confirmation. Blake smiled. We have everything we need. Good. Mason checked his watch. 73 minutes until the deadline. Pack it up. What about them? Logan asked, gesturing at the hostages. Once we confirm the codes work, they're unnecessary. The casual death sentence hung in the air like ice. Hazel felt the shift in the other hostages, desperation replacing fear. Desperate people did stupid things, and stupid things got people killed messily. Joshua, the young tech millionaire, suddenly lunged for Ryan's gun. It was brave and completely futile. Ryan clubbed him down with the rifle butt, then kicked him repeatedly in the ribs. The sound of breaking bones echoed through the cabin. Anyone else want to be a hero? Mason asked. Silence. I thought not. He gestured to Blake. Set the autopilot for descent in 70 minutes. Terminal velocity into the Atlantic. Make it look like a mechanical failure. Already programmed, Blake confirmed. Once we're gone, the plane will maintain altitude for exactly 70 minutes, then nose down. They'll hit the water at 600 miles per hour. Nothing will survive. Hazel processed this information. They had an exit strategy, which meant they had another aircraft meeting them. Probably a high-altitude intercept, military precision. These weren't just terrorists. They were professionals with significant backing. Start moving them to the rear, Mason ordered. Easier to control them in a smaller space. As the terrorists herded everyone toward the back of the plane, Hazel caught Aiden's eye again. The wounded security man had managed to palm something during the chaos. A small knife from the scattered medical supplies. He showed it to her for a fraction of a second before concealing it again. She gave him another tiny headshake. Still not yet. The timing had to be perfect. They were forced into the rear galley area, pressed together in a space meant for food preparation, not human storage. The proximity made everyone more panicked, breathing becoming labored in the confined space. I need to check his wound, Grace said, indicating Daniel. He'll bleed out. Let him, Connor said flatly. Please, Grace begged. I'm a doctor. Just let me stop the bleeding. Mason considered, then nodded. Make it quick. Grace grabbed medical supplies, working efficiently on Daniel's shoulder. As she did, she whispered something to him that Hazel couldn't catch. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded. More planning. More variables. Hazel calculated rapidly. 7 hostiles, but 1 was always on the tablet. 6 effective combatants. 3 assault rifles, multiple sidearms. Confined space worked against them, limited firing angles, high risk of hitting each other. But it also meant no room to maneuver, no cover. The auto-injectors in her pocket pressed against her ribs. Epinephrine, synthetic adrenaline. In the right dose, a powerful stimulant. In the wrong hands, potentially fatal. She had 2 shots, maybe 3 seconds of surprise, and a cabin full of civilians to protect. The math wasn't good, but she'd worked with worse odds. 58 minutes, Blake announced. Mason pulled out the satellite phone again, dialing a different number. This time he spoke in Arabic, which narrowed down their connections considerably. Hazel translated mentally. Package secured, rendezvous on schedule, confirm receipt. A pause, then, Allahu Akbar. But he had said it wrong. The pronunciation was off, the inflection of someone who had learned the phrase without understanding its meaning. These weren't religious extremists. They were mercenaries using religion as cover. That changed things. Mercenaries could be bought, which meant someone was paying them. And whoever was paying them wanted Project Harbinger badly enough to sacrifice a plane full of people. "Hey," Ryan said suddenly, staring at Hazel. "You've been very quiet, little maid." She shrank back, playing her role. "I'm just scared." "No," he said slowly, stepping closer. "It's something else. You've been watching us." "Everyone's been watching you. You have guns." "No, differently. Like you're—" He trailed off, then grabbed her wrist, examining her hands. Her hands that were calloused in all the wrong places for a servant. Calluses from weapons handling, from rope work, from years of combat training. Ryan's eyes widened. "Boss?" Hazel headbutted him in the nose. The crack of breaking cartilage was satisfying, but she couldn't enjoy it. She stripped his Glock from its holster as he staggered back, swept his legs, and had the gun aimed at Mason before anyone could fully process what had happened, except she didn't shoot. Because Mason had anticipated something, his AK already swinging toward Lily. Drop it or she dies. Mexican standoff. Hazel could kill Mason, but Lily would die. The other terrorists would kill her, then probably everyone else in panic. "Interesting," Mason said, studying her over his rifle sights. "Not a servant after all." "Air Marshal," Hazel lied, keeping the Glock steady. "Drop your weapons," Mason laughed. "Air Marshals don't move like that, don't have those reflexes. You're something else." His eyes narrowed. "Private security? No. Government, but not American. You're too comfortable with the accent." The calculation in his eyes was dangerous. She'd revealed capability, but not identity. That uncertainty was her only advantage now. "Shoot her!" Ryan screamed through his broken nose, blood streaming down his face. "No," Mason said thoughtfully. "Not yet. She could have killed you, Ryan, but she didn't. She's operating under rules of engagement. Probably has backup coming." He smiled coldly. "How long until they get here, whoever you are? An hour? 2? We'll be gone in 52 minutes. "You're not going anywhere," Hazel said, surprised by how easily her real voice emerged after hours of pretending, the clipped British accent, prestigious and cold. "5 guns against your 1, Logan observed. "Bad odds." "I've had worse." Something flickered in Mason's eyes. Recognition? No, but close. "Syria," he said suddenly. "You were in Syria. I can see it in your stance, the way you handle the weapon." Hazel said nothing, but he had already seen confirmation in her micro-expressions. "Interesting," Mason repeated. "British intelligence in Syria 2 years ago? There were stories, rumors about someone, a woman." Blake looked up from his tablet, face paling. "Boss, you don't think—" "Check the database," Mason ordered, never taking his eyes off Hazel. "I can't. Not without—" Blake's fingers flew across the screen. "Holy. Mason, we need to go. Now." "Why?" "If she's who I think, there was a British operator in Syria, codename Phantom, single-handedly eliminated an entire IS cell. 12 fighters, all killed in close combat. They found the bodies arranged in a perfect circle, each one killed with a different method." The cabin went very quiet. "But Phantom died," Connor said. "The building collapsed. They confirmed it." "They confirmed a building collapsed," Blake corrected. "No body was ever recovered." Mason studied Hazel with new interest. "Is it true? Are you Phantom?" Hazel smiled for the first time since the hijacking began. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Why don't you come closer and find out?" The tension ratcheted up another notch. Even with 5 guns on her, the terrorists had taken involuntary steps back. "It doesn't matter," Mason said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "You won't risk the civilians." "You sure about that?" Hazel asked. "You know what I did in Syria. All 12 of those fighters thought they had me outnumbered too. This is different, confined space, innocence in the crossfire. Every operation has acceptable losses." She saw Carter flinch at the coldness in her voice. Good. If they believed she was capable of sacrificing civilians, it gave her leverage. "You're bluffing," Logan said. "Am I?" Hazel shifted her aim to Blake's tablet. "How much do you want to bet I can destroy that before you can stop me? Without it, you can't transfer the codes. The whole operation fails. Blake clutched the tablet protectively. She's right. If she damages this, you... Shut up, Mason snarled. Then to Hazel, what do you want? Release the civilians. Keep Sterling if you must, but let the others go. We're at 41,000 feet over the Atlantic. Land the plane, Gander's 90 minutes away. Not happening. Mason checked his watch. 46 minutes until our extraction. You can stand there playing hero until then, but when we leave, this plane still goes down. Unless I stop you. You can't stop all of us. She shifted position slightly, and every terrorist tensed. Want to bet your life on that? The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Hazel's arms didn't waver, the Glock perfectly steady. She had once held a similar position for 3 hours in Kandahar, waiting for the perfect shot. These amateurs had no idea what kind of patience she possessed, but she also knew the math was against her. 5 shooters, confined space, civilians everywhere. Even if she was perfect, people would die. That's when Lily did something unexpected. The flight attendant, who had been trembling in apparent terror, suddenly grabbed the hot coffee pot from the galley and threw it at Connor's face. The scalding liquid made him scream, his rifle swinging wildly. In that instant of chaos, several things happened simultaneously. Aiden lunged from his position, the concealed knife flashing toward Ethan's throat. Grace grabbed the medical scissors and stabbed Logan in the thigh. Daniel, despite his shoulder wound, tackled Ryan's legs. And Hazel moved, not toward Mason as he expected, but diving low and left, using the Glock to club Blake's hand, sending the tablet flying. It hit the cabin wall and cracked, the screen flickering ominously. "No!" Blake screamed, diving for it. Gunfire erupted. The confined space became a symphony of violence. Mason's AK sprayed bullets, punching holes through the cabin walls. Pressure immediately began dropping, oxygen masks deploying automatically. Connor, half blind from the coffee, fired randomly. One bullet caught Joshua in the arm, spinning him into the wall. Another shattered the window beside Sarah, who screamed as the internal pressure from Muz tried to suck her toward the breach. Hazel rolled behind the galley counter as bullets sparked off metal surfaces. She counted muzzle flashes, tracked positions by sound. Ethan had avoided Aiden's knife but not his follow-up elbow strike. They were grappling, the terrorist's superior size against the security man's training. Logan had pulled the scissors from his thigh and was advancing on Grace with murderous intent. Ryan was down, Daniel's desperate tackle having succeeded, but the lawyer had taken another bullet, this one in the stomach. 42 minutes to extraction. But with the cabin pressure compromised, they had maybe 15 minutes before hypoxia became critical. The oxygen masks would help, but not enough, not at this altitude. Mason was screaming orders, trying to regain control. "Secure the tablet! Kill the woman!" Blake had recovered the damaged tablet, frantically trying to salvage the data. "It's corrupted! I need time to..." Hazel popped up, double-tapped Connor center mass. The terrorist went down hard, his rifle clattering across the floor. 4 shooters left. Return fire forced her down again, bullets shredding the galley cabinets above her head. She heard Aiden cry out, hit or just hurt, she couldn't tell. The cabin had become a war zone at 41,000 feet. The temperature was dropping rapidly through the bullet holes, frost already forming on the edges. Everyone was gasping in the thin air, movements becoming sluggish. She had to end this quickly. Pulling one of the auto-injectors from her pocket, she jabbed it into her thigh, feeling the epinephrine surge through her system. Her heart rate spiked, vision sharpening, the sluggishness from oxygen deprivation temporarily offset. Then she heard something that changed everything. Oliver's voice, somehow be free of the duct tape, coming over the intercom. "This is Captain Mitchell. I've locked the cockpit and initiated emergency descent. We'll be at breathable altitude in 6 minutes. Also," his voice turned grimly satisfied, "I've sent our exact position and situation to both NORAD and the RAF. Fighter jets are already scrambling." Mason roared in fury, shooting at the cockpit door. The reinforced barrier held, but barely. "Abort!" Blake shouted. "We need to abort." "Not without the codes," Mason snarled. That's when Hazel stood up fully, no longer hiding. Blood ran from a graze on her temple, and her uniform was torn, revealing something underneath, a tattoo on her shoulder, partially visible through the ripped fabric. The SAS winged dagger. "You want to know if I'm Phantom?" she asked, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Here's your answer." She moved like liquid death. The Glock barked twice. Ethan went down, releasing Aiden. She pivoted, using Logan's momentum against him as he charged, redirecting him into the emergency exit door. His head connected with a sickening crack, and he dropped. Ryan, nose still streaming blood, raised his weapon. Hazel's thrown knife, the one she'd palmed from the medical supplies, took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Aiden finished him with a chokehold, the terrorist going limp in seconds. That left Mason and Blake. The leader had his AK trained on Carter. One more step and Sterling dies. You kill him, you get nothing, Hazel said, advancing anyway. I'll still have the partial codes. Someone will pay for them. No one's paying dead men. Blake was still working frantically on the tablet. I've got it. The backup uploaded before it corrupted. The codes are transmitted. Mason smiled triumphantly. Then we don't need anyone. He shifted his aim from Carter to Hazel, finger tightening on the trigger. The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space, but it wasn't from Mason's rifle. Captain Oliver Mitchell stood in the now open cockpit door, smoking pistol in hand, the emergency weapon all pilots carried post 9/11. Mason looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest, confusion replacing confidence. That's for trying to take my plane, Oliver said. Mason collapsed, the ache falling from nerveless fingers. Blake dropped the tablet, hands raised in surrender. It's over, Hazel said, but she was swaying now, the epinephrine wearing off, oxygen deprivation catching up. The plane shuddered, nose dropping as Oliver's emergency descent continued. They were falling toward breathable air, but also toward the ocean. And with the damage to the controls from the gunfire, Hazel wasn't sure they could pull out in time. Everyone strap in, Oliver commanded, rushing back to the cockpit. This is going to be rough. The next few minutes were a blur. Hazel helped the wounded to seats, using cargo straps to secure those too injured to buckle themselves. Blake she zip-tied to a seat, the terrorist offering no resistance, his face pale with the realization of failure. 30,000 feet, 25. 20. The air grew thicker, breathing easier, but the ocean was rushing up to meet them. Pull up, the automated warning system chanted. Oliver fought the controls, muscles straining against the damaged hydraulics. Come on, baby. Don't quit on me now. 15,000 feet, 10. The plane began to level out, slowly, agonizingly, but they were still descending too fast. Brace for impact, Oliver screamed. 5,000, 4, 3. The nose finally came up, the descent slowing. They leveled out at 800 feet, the Atlantic's white-capped waves visible through the windows. Everyone was gasping, crying or praying. Some, all three. Ladies and gentlemen, Oliver announced, voice shaky but professional. This is your captain. We're stable at 800 feet, heading for Gander International. Emergency services are standing by. And, he paused, drinks are on me for life. Weak laughter rippled through the cabin. Hazel slumped into a seat, exhaustion hitting like a sledgehammer. Aiden limped over, clutching his wounded side but alive. Phantom, huh? He said. She looked at him tiredly. You knew? Suspected. The way you moved, even pretending to be scared. Plus, he smiled slightly, I was SBS before private security. Heard the stories about Syria. Never thought they were true. They're not, she said quietly. Not all of them. Carter approached, looking older than his 60 years. Were you assigned to protect me? Initially, but this was bigger than just you. She gestured at the damaged tablet Blake had dropped. Project Harbinger. They knew too much. Someone inside leaked. We'll find them, Carter said grimly. We always do. As they flew toward Gander, fighter jets appearing on either side as escort, Hazel closed her eyes. The mission was over, but the questions were just beginning. Who had funded this operation? How had they known about Harbinger? And why did Mason recognize her tactics from Syria? Her phone, somehow still intact in her pocket, vibrated with an encrypted message. Phantom confirmed alive. Immediate extraction upon landing. New assignment waiting. M. M for mother, her handler at MI6. She deleted the message and looked out at the ocean. Hazel Brooks, the butler, would disappear in Gander. But Phantom had just announced her resurrection to the world. Every intelligence agency, every terrorist cell, every mercenary group would know she was alive. The game had changed. Hey, Lily said, sitting down beside her. The flight attendant was still shaking, but managing to hold it together. Thank you. Just doing my job. No, Lily said firmly. It was more than that. You could have stayed hidden, kept your cover, but you saved us. Hazel looked at the young woman, saw the hero worship beginning to form, and knew she had to stop it. I'm not a hero, Lily. I'm a weapon. Today you needed a weapon. Tomorrow, someone else will. That's all. I don't believe that. Believe what you want. But stay away from people like me. We don't bring anything but death. Before Lily could respond, Grace called out, I need help. Daniel's crashing. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Grace worked frantically to stabilize Daniel, who'd lost too much blood. Joshua's arm needed a tourniquet. Even some of the terrorists needed medical attention. She was a doctor, after all, bound by oath to do no harm. Hazel helped where she could, her field medic training useful but limited. She kept pressure on wounds, administered morphine from the medical kit, and tried not to think about how young some of these people were. As Gander appeared on the horizon, Oliver's voice crackled over the intercom. 2 minutes to landing, emergency vehicles are standing by. Everyone stay seated until medical personnel board. The landing was rough. The damaged hydraulics made fine control impossible. They hit hard, bounced once, then Oliver managed to keep them down. Fire trucks and ambulances raced alongside as they taxied to a stop. The door opened and chaos erupted again. Paramedics, police, federal agents, all swarming aboard. The wounded were triaged and evacuated. The surviving terrorists were arrested, Blake struggling as they dragged him away, screaming about diplomatic immunity that clearly didn't exist. In the confusion, a woman in a paramedic uniform approached Hazel, but her eyes were wrong, too alert, too knowing. Time to go, Phantom, she said quietly. The debriefing will happen elsewhere. Mother wants you in London yesterday. Hazel nodded, allowing herself to be led toward a waiting ambulance. As she passed Carter, he grabbed her arm. Will I see you again? He asked. Probably not. Then thank you for everything. She almost told him the truth, that she hadn't been there for him at all, that protecting him had been incidental to the real mission of stopping Harbinger from being compromised. But what would be the point? Take care, Mr. Sterling, and change your security protocols. All of them. As the ambulance doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of the damaged Gulfstream. Bullet holes, blood stains, windows cracked but not broken. It would never fly again, but it had held together when it mattered, like her cover. Shattered now, but it had lasted long enough. The woman in paramedic uniform handed her a tablet. Your next assignment. Hazel looked at the file. Venezuela, 15 hostages held by a drug cartel. 48 hours to infiltrate and extract. When do I leave? Your flight's in 3 hours. New identity documents are in the bag beside you. Hazel opened the bag, pulled out a passport. Her new name was Maria Santos, agricultural inspector from Brazil. She almost laughed. From British butler to Brazilian bureaucrat. What about the Syria connection? She asked. Mason knew something. That's being investigated, but Mother thinks your Syria op wasn't as classified as we thought. Someone's been selling information. A mole in MI6, or worse, in the SAS itself. Either way, her past was catching up. The ambulance pulled into a nondescript hangar where a private jet waited. As she boarded, Hazel Brooks ceased to exist. The butler who'd served tea at 41,000 feet was gone. But Phantom was just getting started. As the jet climbed into the darkening sky, she thought about Lily's words, heroes and weapons. Maybe there wasn't as much difference as she pretended. Or maybe that was just what weapons told themselves to sleep at night. Her phone buzzed. Another encrypted message, this one from an unknown sender. Syria wasn't the beginning. It wasn't even the middle. The circle is closing, Phantom. V. She knew only one person who signed that way. Someone who was supposed to be dead, killed in the building collapse that had been her cover story for survival. Her handler in Syria, the one who had sent her after those 12 IS fighters, the one who'd betrayed her and left her to die. Viktor Volkov, Mason's brother. The game, it seemed, had been rigged from the start, but that was a problem for another day. Tonight, she had a flight to Venezuela and 15 hostages to save. Tomorrow, she'd deal with ghosts from Syria. After all, she was Phantom, and Phantoms were very good at haunting those who deserved it. The jet banked south, carrying her toward her next war. Behind them, the lights of Gander faded into darkness, along with any trace of the woman she'd pretended to be. Some transformations, she reflected, happened at 41,000 feet in a hail of bullets. Others happened in the quiet moments after, when you realized the mask you wore had become more real than the face beneath. But in the end, it didn't matter. She had work to do, people to save, enemies to hunt. The Butler was dead. The jet carrying Hazel toward Venezuela suddenly banked hard right, throwing her against the window. The pilot's voice crackled through the cabin intercom, professional but tense. "Ma'am, we've been ordered to return to Gander. Priority override from London." Hazel was already moving toward the cockpit. "What's happening?" "Don't know, but it's coming from the highest levels. Mother herself, apparently." The name made her pause. Mother didn't abort missions without extraordinary reasons. Venezuela would have to wait. 20 minutes later, they were descending back toward the same airport she'd just left. But instead of the main terminal, they were directed to a military section where she could see vehicles with government plates waiting on the tarmac. As soon as the jet's door opened, a familiar figure stood waiting. James Crawford, deputy director of MI6, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past 5 hours. "Phantom," he said without preamble, "we have a situation. The Venezuela mission, canceled, or rather, postponed." He handed her a tablet as they walked toward a waiting SUV. Blake talked, the surviving terrorist. What he revealed changes everything. Hazel scanned the interrogation transcript as they drove. Her blood gradually turned to ice as she read. "This can't be right," she said finally. "I'm afraid it is. The Volkov brothers weren't just random mercenaries. They were part of something much larger, a network we've been tracking for 3 years without knowing it." The SUV pulled into another hangar, this one containing a mobile command center. Inside, screens displayed satellite imagery, communication intercepts, and facial recognition data. At the center of it all stood a woman Hazel knew only by reputation. Mother, Director Margaret Thorne, head of MI6's Special Operations Division. "Hazel," she said, using her real name for the first time in 2 years. Or should I say, former Lieutenant Colonel Hazel Brooks, SAS, Distinguished Service Order, Victoria Cross. "Ma'am?" "Sit." It wasn't a request. "What do you remember about Syria?" "Everything," Hazel replied. "It's not something you forget. Tell me about Viktor Volkov." Hazel's jaw tightened. "He was my handler for the deep cover operation. Russian FSB turned asset, or so we thought. He provided intelligence on the IS cell that was planning to acquire chemical weapons. And he led me into a trap. The 12 fighters I eliminated were just the outer security. The real cell was 3 times that size. The building collapse that supposedly killed me was rigged explosives, designed to bury everyone who knew about the operation." Mother nodded slowly. "What you didn't know was that Viktor Volkov survived too. He used the chaos to disappear with the chemical weapons the IS cell had already acquired. He's been selling them piece by piece to the highest bidder. And Mason? His younger brother. This hijacking wasn't about Project Harbinger, not really. It was about drawing you out. Victor knew that if his brother threatened something significant enough, we'd deploy our best asset. He knew we'd send you." The implications hit Hazel like a physical blow. The entire thing was a trap? More than that, it was a test. Mother pulled up a new file on the screen. "In the past 6 months, 17 intelligence operatives worldwide have been killed. All of them had one thing in common. They were involved in operations where the supposedly dead were actually alive. Victor is hunting ghosts, Phantom. People like you who were officially killed in action but continued operating under deep cover. Why? Because he's building something. A network of the officially dead, the disappeared, the ghosts of the intelligence world. Some join willingly. Others..." Mother gestured at photos of the 17 dead operatives. "Others refuse." Crawford interjected. "Blake confirmed that Mason was supposed to identify you, not kill you. The plan was to force you to reveal yourself, then Victor would make contact with an offer." "What kind of offer?" "Join his network or die for real this time." Hazel stood, pacing to process this information. "So, the chemical weapons, the Syria operation, my supposed death, it was all part of a longer game?" "It appears so. And here's the truly disturbing part." Mother brought up a new screen. "These are all the operations Victor has been connected to in the past 2 years. Notice a pattern?" Hazel studied the data. Assassinations, thefts, hijackings, kidnappings, all high profile, all targeting specific individuals or technologies. And all of them had one thing in common. "They're all defensive capabilities," she said slowly. Missile defense systems, early warning networks, cyber defense protocols. He's not stealing weapons, he's stealing shields. Exactly. Whatever Victor is planning, he wants certain nations defenseless when it happens. The weight of this settled on Hazel's shoulders. This wasn't just about her or revenge for Syria. This was about something much larger. What do you need me to do? Mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Officially, nothing. Phantom is dead, remember? But unofficially, she slid a folder across the table. Victor has made a mistake. His brother's capture means we have a direct line to him. Blake doesn't know where Victor is, but he knows how to contact him. You want me to use myself as bait. I want you to accept his offer, join his network, become one of his ghosts. A double agent. A triple agent, technically, since he believes you are already doubled from Syria. Mother's expression was grave. This is completely voluntary, Hazel. The risk is extraordinary. If Victor discovers the truth, he'll finish what he started in Syria, Hazel completed. I understand. There's more, Crawford said. The passengers from your flight, they're not handling the aftermath well. He showed her news footage from outside Gander's hospital. Lily Chen being interviewed, tears streaming down her face as she described the heroic Butler, who turned out to be a special forces operator. Oliver Mitchell, surrounded by reporters, trying to explain how he'd flown with Hazel for 8 months without suspecting anything. Carter Sterling, refusing all interviews but clearly shaken. They're looking for you, Crawford continued. The media is calling you the Ghost Butler. Social media has exploded. Someone leaked that you're Phantom, and now every conspiracy theorist on the internet is trying to piece together your history. Hazel watched Lily on the screen, saw the trauma in her eyes. They didn't ask for any of this. No, they didn't, which is why we're implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7, complete identity reconstruction for civilian witnesses. New names, new histories, relocation if necessary. Expensive, complicated, and life-altering. That seems extreme, Hazel said. Not if Victor's people come after them, Mother replied. Anyone who can identify you is now a potential target or intelligence source. We're offering them protection, but at a cost. Their lives as they knew them. Yes, the weight of unintended consequences. Hazel had saved their lives, but in doing so had destroyed their normal existence. Hero or weapon? Maybe Lily had been wrong. Maybe she was just collateral damage in motion. A knock on the command center door interrupted her thoughts. An analyst entered, face pale. Ma'am, we have a problem. Blake is dead. Everyone turned sharply. Crawford pulled up the detention center footage on the main screen. Blake in his cell, under constant surveillance. Then, between one frame and the next, he was on the floor convulsing. 30 seconds later, still. Poison? Hazel asked. Neurotoxin, the analyst confirmed. Delivered through a micro capsule embedded in a tooth filling. Advanced stuff, triggered remotely. Victor's cleaning house, Mother said grimly. He knew Blake would talk. Or Blake served his purpose, Hazel suggested. He delivered the message he was supposed to, that this was all about me. Her phone, a new one, supposedly secure, buzzed with an incoming message. Everyone tensed as she read it. Impressive performance, Phantom, but the curtain has only just risen. If you want to know the truth about Syria, about why you were chosen, meet me where it all began. You have 72 hours. Come alone, come armed, come prepared to listen. Or don't come at all, and watch everyone from that plane die one by one. V. Attached was a set of coordinates. Northern Syria, less than 50 miles from where her supposed death had occurred. It's a trap, Crawford said immediately. Obviously, Hazel agreed, but he's not bluffing about the passengers. He has the resources to hunt them down. Mother was already typing. I'm mobilizing security teams for all the survivors. That won't be enough, Hazel said. Not if he's serious. The only way to protect them is to give him what he wants. Me. You're not going to Syria alone. No, I'm not, but he needs to think I am. Hazel turned to Mother. How quickly can you position a strike team outside the coordinates? 12 hours, minimum, but if he has surveillance, he will. So we need a different approach. Hazel pulled up a map of the region. Here, 60 miles south, there's a refugee camp run by Doctors Without Borders. I spent 3 weeks there after the building collapse, recovering. They know me, trust me. If I can get Victor to move the meeting there, too many civilians at risk, Crawford protested. Not if we evacuate them first. Medical emergency, quarantine protocols. The camp clears, we fill it with our people, posing as refugees and medical staff. Mother considered this. It could work, but Victor's not stupid. He'll see through it. Not if I sell it properly. Not if I make him believe I'm coming in broken, desperate for answers. Hazel met Mother's gaze. I need to become the phantom he expects. The one who barely survived Syria, who's been running ever since, who's tired of being a ghost. Method acting on a lethal scale, Crawford murmured. It's what I do, Hazel replied simply. Over the next 6 hours, they planned. Every detail, every contingency, every possible variation. But even as they strategized, Hazel's mind kept returning to that cabin at 41,000 feet. To Lily's tears, Oliver's steady hands on the controls, Carter's blood on the windows. She'd saved them from terrorists, but had she doomed them to something worse? A life of looking over their shoulders, wondering if every stranger was a threat, every shadow a potential killer? Ma'am, an analyst interrupted, we have a situation at the hospital. The screen showed security footage from Gander General, a figure in scrubs and a surgical mask, moving through the corridors with purposeful efficiency. They stopped outside Daniel Morrison's room, the lawyer who'd been shot trying to help. Security response now, Mother barked. But it was too late. The figure entered the room. The camera angle showed Daniel sleeping, still weak from surgery. The intruder approached the bed, reached out, and gently adjusted Daniel's blanket, checking his IV drip with practiced medical efficiency. Wait, Hazel said. Zoom in on the hands. The analyst enhanced the image. The hands were feminine, marked with small scars. Familiar scars. That's Grace, Hazel realized. The doctor from the plane. What is she doing? They watched as Grace, if it was really her, pulled something from her pocket. A syringe. She drew medication from a vial, injected it into Daniel's IV port, then left as quietly as she'd come. Get someone in there now, Mother ordered. Minutes later, confirmation came back. The substance was antibiotics. High-grade, military-spec antibiotics not available at this hospital. Morrison's infection risk just dropped to 0. She's protecting him, Hazel said slowly. But why the secrecy? Why not just... She stopped, understanding flooding through her. She's not really a doctor, or not just a doctor. Mother was already pulling files. Dr. Grace Ashford, emergency medicine, Johns Hopkins. But look at this, a 5-year gap in her history. From age 23 to 28, she doesn't exist. Military, Crawford guessed. Special Operations Medical Corps? Or intelligence, Hazel suggested. A medical officer embedded in civilian life, waiting for activation. There's more, the analyst said. I've been reviewing the passenger manifest more carefully. Joshua Lamb, the tech millionaire, his company does classified work for the NSA. Sarah Winters, the venture capitalist, she's funded 3 defense startups in the past year. Even Lily Chen, she wasn't randomly assigned to that flight. She specifically requested it 6 months ago. The implications were staggering. They were all plants? Not all, Mother corrected, studying the data. Oliver and Carter appeared genuine, but the others, it seems multiple agencies had assets on that plane. Watching Carter or watching me? Possibly both. You've been flying with him for 8 months. Any intelligence service tracking Harbinger would have noticed the pattern. Hazel laughed, short and bitter. So the hijacking wasn't just a trap for me. It was a honeypot that attracted every spy in the vicinity. And now they've all been exposed, Crawford added. Grace, Joshua, Sarah, possibly others. Their covers are blown just like yours. If Victor didn't just want to draw me out, Hazel realized, he wanted to create chaos, to force multiple intelligence agencies to reveal assets. But why? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor. Figured it out yet? Check the news, Phantom. The show has begun. Mother switched the screens to international news feeds. The lead story on every channel was the same. Leaked footage from inside the Gulfstream during the hijacking. But not just any footage. Carefully edited clips showing Hazel's transformation from Butler to warrior, complete with slow-motion replays of her combat moves. How? Crawford demanded. We secured all devices. The plane's internal security cameras, Hazel said, watching herself on screen disarm Connor in high definition. Blake must have uploaded it before the tablet was damaged. But that wasn't the worst part. The footage was accompanied by a data dump, passenger information, flight records, and selectively edited communications that suggested the entire flight had been a CIA operation gone wrong. "He's not just exposing assets," Mother said quietly. "He's creating an international incident. The Russians are already demanding explanations about a British operator on an American executive's plane. The Chinese want to know why their citizen, Lily Chen has dual nationality, was placed in danger. The Saudis are asking about defense secrets, since one of their princes has stakes in Carter's company." "Chaos," Hazel repeated. "He's creating enough chaos that agencies will be too busy defending themselves to coordinate against him." The news switched to a press conference, the British Foreign Secretary denying any knowledge of intelligence operations. The American State Department claiming the hijacking was a simple criminal matter, everyone pointing fingers, no one taking responsibility. And in the middle of it all, footage of Hazel's face, the moment her mask slipped, when she'd smiled at Masons and asked if he wanted to find out if she was Phantom. That cold, predatory smile that belonged to a killer, not a servant. "I'm trending on Twitter," she said flatly, "and Phantom Butler." "Wonderful. This changes our approach," Mother said. "With this much exposure, you can't operate covertly anymore. Every intelligence agency, terrorist cell, and mercenary group in the world now knows Phantom is alive, which is exactly what Victor wants. He's not trying to recruit me, he's making sure I have nowhere else to go. If every agency knows who I am, if I'm burned globally, then joining his network becomes my only option." Crawford's phone rang. He listened briefly, face grave. That was Gander Hospital. Someone just tried to access Daniel Morrison's room again. Security stopped them, but barely. Professional team, military tactics. "It's starting," Hazel said. "He's going after them. We can protect them. For how long? Forever? They can't live in witness protection their entire lives because of me." Mother's expression was calculating. "You're going to Syria." It wasn't a question. "I have to. It's the only way to end this. You know it's a trap. Everything's been a trap since the moment I became Phantom. At least this time, I'm walking in with my eyes open." Over the next 48 hours, Hazel prepared, not just tactically, weapons, equipment, surveillance countermeasures, but psychologically. She had to become the version of herself Victor expected, tired, hunted, desperate for answers. She watched the news coverage obsessively. The story had evolved from hijacking to international conspiracy. Talking heads debated whether Phantom was hero or villain. Conspiracy theorists connected dots that didn't exist. The passengers had become celebrities by association. Oliver Mitchell had been offered a book deal. Carter Sterling's company stock had somehow increased. And Lily Chen had become an inadvertent social media influencer, with millions of followers desperate for details about the mysterious Butler. But it was the quieter stories that hurt. Daniel Morrison's wife, crying on camera, begging people to leave her husband alone to recover. Sarah Winters losing her venture capital position because her clients no longer trusted her. Joshua Lamb's company under federal investigation. Lives destroyed because Hazel had chosen to act instead of maintaining cover. No, she reminded herself. Lives destroyed because Victor had forced her hand. The distinction mattered, even if the result was the same. On the second night, she received an encrypted video message. It was Lily Chen, somehow having found a way to contact her through 7 layers of security. "I know you'll probably never see this," Lily said to the camera, her face drawn but determined. "But I had to try. Everyone's calling you a hero, or a spy, or a killer, but I was there. I saw you hesitate before you acted. I saw you try to find another way. You didn't want to fight. You had to. And afterward, you didn't celebrate or gloat. You just looked tired, like someone who's been fighting for so long they've forgotten what peace feels like." Lily paused, wiping away tears. "They're hunting us now, the others from the plane. Strange cars outside our houses, weird phone calls, people following us. The government says they're protecting us, but it feels more like we're prisoners. All because we were on that plane, because we saw you become who you really are. But here's what I wanted to say. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry I was on that plane, not sorry I saw the truth. Because now I know people like you exist. People who stand between the darkness and the rest of us, who pay prices we can't imagine so we can sleep safely." Lily looked directly at the camera, as if she could see Hazel through it. "So, Don't you dare apologize for saving us. Don't you dare feel guilty for being who you are. You're not a weapon. You're a guardian. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, know that at least one person understands the difference." The message ended. Hazel sat in the darkness for a long time, processing. Then she deleted the message, destroyed the device that received it, and went back to her preparations. Guardians didn't get to keep the messages that mattered, but they remembered them. The flight to Turkey was uneventful. Commercial airline, tourist class. Hazel dressed as a backpacker with false documents, identifying her as Emma Martinez, Spanish humanitarian worker. From Turkey, she crossed into Syria through irregular channels, the kind used by aid workers and journalists who couldn't wait for official permits. The landscape hadn't changed much in 2 years. Destroyed buildings, displaced families, the omnipresent dust that turned everything the color of old bones. The war had officially ended, but its ghosts lingered in every crater, every burned vehicle, every memorial spray-painted on broken walls. She reached the refugee camp 12 hours before the deadline. As predicted, it had been evacuated. A supposed outbreak of resistant tuberculosis requiring immediate quarantine. The remaining staff were all MI6 and SAS operators in deep cover, maintaining the facade while preparing for what would come. "Phantom," a familiar voice called. She turned to find Marcus Webb, her former SAS squadron commander, dressed as a camp administrator. Seeing him was like looking at a ghost of her former life. "Colonel Webb." "Just Marcus now. I retired after Syria." His expression was complicated. "When we thought you died, it broke something in the unit. Losing our first female operator, and in a trap we should have seen coming. Several of us couldn't continue after that." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Finding out you're alive, that you survived and continued the mission, it helps, somehow." He gestured around the seemingly empty camp. "We have 40 operators in position. Snipers, assault teams, medical support. If this goes sideways, it will," Hazel interrupted. "Victor doesn't make mistakes. He knows this is a trap, just like I know his invitation is. We're playing chess, and we both can see the entire board. Then why play? Because sometimes the only way to win is to flip the board entirely." 3 hours before the deadline, she moved to the coordinates Victor had provided. It was a destroyed building, probably a former school based on the small desks scattered in the rubble. The same type of building where her supposed death had occurred. Symbolism. Victor did love his dramatic touches. She waited in the open, visible, vulnerable, making herself the perfect target while every instinct screamed at her to find cover. He didn't come alone. She hadn't expected him to. 7 figures emerged from concealed positions, moving with military precision to surround her. 6 formed a perimeter while the 7th approached. Viktor Volkov hadn't changed much. Tall, lean, with the kind of forgettable face that made him perfect for intelligence work. Except for his eyes, pale gray, like winter sky, holding an intelligence that missed nothing. "Phantom," he said in accented English. "Or should I call you Hazel? Though I suppose neither is your real name. Names are just labels. You should know that better than most, considering how many you've used." He smiled. "True, though I have grown fond of Victor. It means conqueror in Russian. Appropriate, don't you think?" "That depends on what you are trying to conquer." "The old world order, the invisible chains that bind us all, but we'll get to that." He gestured at the ruins around them. "Do you remember this place?" "Should I? 2 years ago, this was a school. 300 children learned here, laughed here, dreamed of futures that would never come." His voice held genuine emotion. "Because 3 days before our operation, the Americans bombed it. They claimed it was an IS stronghold. It wasn't. It was just a school. And that's when I realized the truth. That we're all pawns in games played by people who never see the consequences, who move pieces on boards from comfortable offices while real people bleed in the dust." He stepped closer. "That's why I saved you in Syria, Hazel. Why I set the explosives to create a survivable pocket. Because I saw in you what I saw in myself. Someone who could transcend the game." "You left me to die," Hazel said flatly. "I left you to be reborn. There's a difference." He pulled out a tablet, showing her footage she'd never seen before. Security camera footage from the Syria operation. "Watch." She saw herself moving through the building, eliminating the IS fighters with brutal efficiency, but there was more. Glimpses of Victor in the shadows, directing the fighters away from her position, creating the perfect corridor for her assault. You were helping me. I was testing you. The 12 fighters were real terrorists, yes, but they were also a test. Could one operator, pushed to the absolute limit, transcend normal human capabilities? You passed. And the chemical weapons? Were never there. It was all a recruitment exercise. The IS cell, the intelligence, the trap, all designed to identify operators extraordinary enough to fake their own deaths and continue serving from the shadows. The scope of the manipulation was breathtaking. How many others? 17 successful recruitments over 5 years. You would have been the 18th, but you disappeared too efficiently. Even I couldn't find you until Mason drew you out. Your brother. Victor's expression darkened. Half-brother. And a disappointment. He was supposed to identify you, not terrorize civilians. But he always did have more ambition than sense. He's dead. I know. You did me a favor. He was becoming a liability. The casual dismissal of family was chilling. But Hazel kept her expression neutral, playing the role of someone considering an offer. What exactly are you recruiting for, Victor? Freedom, true freedom. Not the illusion they sell us, but actual autonomy. He gestured to his surrounding men. Every one of these operators was officially killed in action, betrayed by their governments, abandoned by their agencies, left to die for political convenience. But they survived, and now they serve a different purpose, which is preventing the next global catastrophe. He showed her more files on the tablet. Every major power is developing weapons that could end civilization. Biological agents, AI warfare systems, orbital bombardment platforms. Project Harbinger is just one of dozens. And the politicians controlling them are increasingly unstable, increasingly willing to use them. So, you steal them. I neutralize them. Create balance through controlled chaos. If everyone's defenses are compromised, no one can attack without facing annihilation. Mutual vulnerability instead of mutual destruction. It was insane. It was also, in a twisted way, logical. And you want me to join this crusade? I want you to help lead it. You're not just skilled, Hazel. You're symbolic. The first woman to earn the SAS winged dagger. The operator who survived Syria. The ghost who saved a plane full of civilians, even though it meant burning your cover. You represent everything we stand for. Skill, survival, and sacrifice for a greater good. Pretty words, Hazel said. But you're still a terrorist. Am I? I haven't killed a single innocent. Every operation targets military or intelligence assets. Every theft prevents weapons from being used. Tell me, how many innocents has MI6 sacrificed for the greater good? How many has the SAS killed in operations that were later deemed mistakes? He had a point, and they both knew it. What happened to the other recruitments? The 17 who joined you? They're around the world, living new lives, waiting for activation. Some infiltrate governments, others work in private security, a few run humanitarian operations that give us access to conflict zones. He smiled. You have probably worked with some without knowing it. The thought was unsettling. How many ghosts were out there, hiding in plain sight? And if I refuse, then you leave here alive, but you'll never be safe. Not because I'll hunt you, I won't, but because now everyone knows you exist. How long before China tries to grab you, or Russia, or any of a dozen terrorist organizations who want revenge for operations you've conducted? MI6 can't protect you forever, not when you're this exposed. So, join you or die eventually. Join me or live hunted. There's a difference. Hazel pretended to consider this, knowing her backup was listening to every word. The camp was only 2 miles away. Strike teams could be here in minutes, but Victor wasn't stupid. He had to know that too. You're wondering about your backup, he said, amused. The 43 operators hidden in the refugee camp. Oh yes, I know about them. I've known since they arrived. Hazel's blood chilled. How? Because one of them is mine. Has been for 2 years. He raised his voice. You can come out now, Marcus. No, not possible. But Marcus Webb emerged from cover, moving to stand beside Victor. Her former commander, the man who had welcomed her back hours ago, was one of Victor's ghosts. Hello again, Hazel, Marcus said quietly. I'm sorry for the deception, but I had to maintain cover until the right moment. You were at the camp. I helped plan an ambush that was never going to happen. Every position I provided, every operator placement, Victor knows them all. Marcus's expression was genuinely apologetic. Your backup is neutralized, non-lethally, he added quickly. Gas attack, already deployed. They're unconscious, not dead. Victor doesn't kill allies, even misguided ones. Hazel's hand moved to her weapon. Don't, Victor said mildly. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. But you're not out of time. My offer stands. This was beyond disaster. 43 operators down, her position completely compromised, and one of their own senior officers turned traitor. Or was he? She studied Marcus carefully. Something in his eyes, a micro-expression when he had mentioned the gas attack. He was lying about something. But what? Prove it, she said suddenly. Prove my backup is down. Victor gestured to one of his men, who produced a military radio. Static filled the air, then nothing. No response from the camp. But static could be faked. Radio silence could be protocol. I need to see for myself, Hazel said. Of course. Victor seemed pleased. We'll all go. Witness the new world order being born. They moved as a group toward the camp, Hazel surrounded but not restrained. She counted steps, memorized positions, planned 17 different escape routes, knowing none would work against these odds. The camp appeared deserted as they approached. Too quiet. No birds, no iniks, nothing. Then she saw them. Bodies in humanitarian worker disguises, scattered around the camp. All unconscious, breathing, but incapacitated. Impressive, isn't it? Victor said. A neural inhibitor of my own design. They'll wake in 6 hours with headaches but no permanent damage. I'm not a monster, Hazel. I don't kill unnecessarily. She knelt beside one of the operators, checking his pulse. Steady, strong, alive. Why? She asked. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just grabbed me in Gander. Because I needed you to understand. To see that the system you serve is broken, that it will sacrifice you the moment you become inconvenient, just like it sacrificed these operators by sending them into a trap they couldn't win. They came to protect me. They came because they were ordered to. How many of them know you personally? How many would have chosen this if given a real choice? Another uncomfortable truth. Victor moved closer, his voice becoming passionate. Join us, Hazel. Help me build something better. A network of the best operators in the world, beholden to no government, serving no political agenda, preventing the wars that would destroy everything. Under your command, under collective leadership. I'm not building a dictatorship. Every ghost has a voice, a vote. We operate by consensus when possible, by necessity when not. It was tempting. She could see why 17 operators had said yes. The promise of mattering, of making real change instead of following orders that made no sense. But she'd also seen the casualties, the passengers traumatized, lives disrupted, the chaos that followed in his wake. I need time to think, she said. You have 1 hour. Then, decision or not, I leave. And you either come with me or remain here to explain to MI6 how their entire operation was compromised. He smiled. I imagine that conversation would be difficult. He walked away, leaving her alone among the unconscious operators. Or, seemingly alone, she knew she was being watched. Hazel moved through the camp, checking each fallen operator, all alive, all breathing steadily. Whatever Victor had used, it was remarkably precise. No casualties, just incapacitation. She found the medical tent, surprised to find it intact. Inside, supplies remained organized, undisturbed. Why leave potential weapons? The answer came when she saw the note on the surgical table, her name written in Marcus's handwriting. Inside was a single line. Building 3, under the floorboards. He doesn't know everything. M. A double game. Marcus was playing both sides. She moved casually toward Building 3, maintaining the appearance of aimless wandering. Inside, she found the loose floorboard quickly. Beneath it, a satellite phone and a single flash drive. The phone had one number programmed. She dialed. Phantom, mother's voice, tight with control. Package received. The tea party was larger than expected. 43 guests are sleeping but safe. Code. The operation was compromised but recoverable. Understood. Your recommendation? Accept the invitation. The host has more friends than we knew. Confirmed. Maintain cover. Assets are mobilizing. The line went dead. Hazel destroyed the phone, pocketed the flash drive, and returned to where Victor waited. I've decided, she announced. He turned, expectant. I'll join you, but I have conditions. Such as? The plane passengers remain untouched. All of them. Forever. Agreed. MI6 operators here wake up unharmed? Already guaranteed. And I want to know everything. The full network, all operations, every ghost you've recruited. Victor smiled. That will take time to earn. Trust is built slowly in our world. Then let's start building. He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she shook it. Welcome to the new world, Phantom. As his team prepared for extraction, Hazel thought about Lily's message. Guardian or weapon? Maybe the distinction didn't matter. Maybe what mattered was choosing the right target. The helicopter arrived, black and unmarked. As they boarded, Hazel caught Marcus's eye. He nodded slightly. Message received. Victor had his network of ghosts, but he'd just recruited one who knew how to hunt the dead. The game had changed, but it was far from over. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying her toward an uncertain future, Hazel thought about the passengers from Flight 773. They were safe for now, but forever changed. She'd saved their lives, but stolen their normalcy. Hero, weapon, guardian, or ghost. In the end, she was all of them, and none of them. She was Phantom, and phantoms, by definition, were whatever people needed them to be. The Syrian landscape faded below, but she knew she'd be back. This was just the beginning of something larger, more complex than a simple hijacking or recruitment. Her phone, the one Victor had given her, buzzed with an encrypted message. Your first assignment awaits in Hong Kong, a weapons dealer selling something that shouldn't exist. Handle it however you see fit. Welcome to the family. V. Family. The word felt wrong, but also oddly appropriate. A family of the professionally dead, the officially forgotten, the ghosts who moved through the world unseen. She opened the flash drive Marcus had left on her new phone. A single file, a list of names. The 17 ghosts Victor had recruited, their real identities, their covers, their locations. Marcus hadn't just infiltrated Victor's network. He'd mapped it. The helicopter turned east toward Turkey, carrying her toward a new life that was really just her old life wrapped in different shadows. But now, she had something she'd never had before, a complete picture of the battlefield. Victor thought he'd recruited Phantom. He had no idea he'd just invited his own haunting. 6 months later, news broke of an international sting operation that captured 12 terrorist cells simultaneously. The operation was credited to unprecedented cooperation between intelligence agencies, though no one could explain how they'd gotten such precise information. A year later, a weapons dealer in Hong Kong disappeared, along with his entire inventory of banned biological weapons. No one claimed responsibility. 18 months later, a cyber attack on MI6 was thwarted by an anonymous tip that arrived exactly 3 minutes before it would have succeeded. 2 years later, Viktor Volkov's body was found in a destroyed school in Syria, dead from a single bullet wound. The positioning was precise, professional, and very personal. Beside him was a note, for Flight 773, for the 43, for everyone caught in between, P. The network of ghosts dissolved overnight, its members vanishing into whatever shadows they'd emerged from. Some returned to their agencies with invaluable intelligence. Others disappeared entirely, choosing to remain dead to the world. Marcus Webb received a full pardon and a quiet retirement, his double agent status finally revealed. The passengers of Flight 773 slowly rebuilt their lives. Daniel Morrison became an advocate for aviation security. Oliver Mitchell wrote his book, donating all proceeds to victims of terrorism. Lily Chen used her unexpected platform to raise awareness about PTSD and trauma recovery. Carter Sterling implemented new security measures at his company, but more importantly, he started a foundation supporting the families of fallen Special Forces operators. And somewhere in the world, a woman who didn't officially exist continued her work. Sometimes she was a butler, sometimes a doctor, sometimes a teacher. Always watching, always ready, always prepared to step from shadow into light when innocents were threatened. She never contacted the Flight 773 survivors directly, but she watched over them. When Daniel's son was kidnapped by criminals seeking ransom, they mysteriously released him unharmed. When Lily received death threats from extremists, they suddenly stopped. When Oliver's pension was threatened by bureaucratic red tape, it miraculously resolved. Guardian angel or vengeful ghost? The distinction didn't matter to those she protected. In a small apartment in London, surrounded by false identities and weapons that would never be registered, Hazel Brooks sat at a computer. On the screen was a message board accessible only to those who knew it existed, where the officially dead could communicate with each other. A new message appeared. Transport vessel hijacked off Somalia. 300 civilians. Local forces overwhelmed. Can anyone assist? She typed a reply. Phantom available. Send coordinates. ETA 6 hours. Because that's what she was now. Not British or American, not SAS or MI6, not hero or villain. She was Phantom. And Phantoms protected those who couldn't protect themselves, haunted those who preyed on the innocent, and existed in the spaces between light and darkness where the real battles were fought. The butler was dead. The soldier was forgotten. The woman was a ghost. But Phantom? Phantom was eternal. As she prepared for Somalia, she thought one last time about Flight 73, about how a simple hijacking had unraveled into a global conspiracy, how saving 5 lives had led to exposing a network that threatened millions. Every action had consequences. Every choice created ripples. Every mask worn changed both the wearer and those who saw it fall. But in the end, when the masks were gone and the truth was revealed, what mattered was simple. She'd stood between evil and innocence. She'd chosen to act when she could have hidden. She'd saved lives that mattered, even at the cost of the life she'd built. Hero, weapon, guardian, ghost, the labels were irrelevant. She was Phantom, and somewhere at 41,000 feet, where the sky met space and prayers met silence, that was enough. The story of Flights 3 was over, but Phantom's story, that had just begun. In government files and intelligence databases, in whispered legends among operators and fearful myths among terrorists, one truth echoed: Phantom lives. And as long as evil existed, as long as the innocent needed protection, as long as someone had to stand in the darkness to guard the light, Phantom would endure. The ghost in the machine, the butler who wasn't, the soldier who couldn't die, the woman who chose to become legend, one saved life at a time. This was her story. This was her curse. This was her purpose. And she wouldn't have it any other way.